Hello one and all, and welcome to the Totally Connected podcast, your portal to the cutting edge of New Zealand's tech scene, proudly presented by Entelar Group, the total connection company covering distribution, integrated end-to-end supply chain, IT field delivery and services and more. Today we're speaking with Jan Thornborough and Wendy Bennett from Outfox. Now, Outfox is an award-winning cyber resilience company that specialises in helping Kiwi enterprises become more cyber resilient, delivering tailor-made practical solutions to help those businesses detect, respond to and recover from cyber attacks. Welcome, Jan and Wendy. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for having us on today.
Hey, it's my absolute pleasure. Let's just jump right in, shall we, and take it from the top. Now, tell me a little bit about how did Outfox start? You guys have your origins in the National Cybersecurity Centre, right?
Yes, that's correct. Both Wendy and I used to work at the National Cybersecurity Centre. I was the head of the Cyber Resilience Unit and Wendy was leading the Policy Management Unit. And we were sitting there one day in the middle of a lockdown thinking, what now? Reflecting on your life as you do. And we decided that actually the small to medium-sized market was really underserved by cybersecurity professionals, and we could see a real opportunity there to actually get out and help them get better at being cyber resilient. So I jumped ship. Wendy followed a year later, and we set up, as it was originally known, Intelligentsia, but we very quickly changed the name to Outfox when Wendy came on board, and it's been a great flagship for us. We now work with small to medium enterprises the whole length of New Zealand and also overseas, and this is where we find ourselves today.
Makes perfect sense to me, Jan. Now, I guess when you were with the National Cybersecurity Centre, what was it specifically that you found, in what way were small businesses being underserved, Wendy?
With our roles within the National Cybersecurity Centre, they definitely have been pulled together to serve critical infrastructure organisations in New Zealand and government agencies. So they definitely are looking at big business. And I think there is a place called CERT New Zealand who has been set up by government to be serving individuals and small to medium business across New Zealand. It's not so much that our government agencies can't service them. There's just so many of them that don't reach the thresholds for what government is doing to be able to do that effectively. So we just want to be able to help them before they lost their business, I guess. We're trying to help them be able to protect themselves from a cyber attack first. And there's just not a lot of information out there that's available to them that is easy for them to implement at the moment.
Right, yes, the cliche of the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff idea, yeah. So what are the challenges actually facing SMBs in 2024?
Well, first of all, it's often a lack of understanding about how great the cyber threat actually is. And of course, we're in the middle of a financial recession, so people are thinking that cyber security and cyber resilience is not actually a thing they need to worry about. But the reality is that cybercrime is getting bigger and bigger every year. So back when I started in cybersecurity, they were predicting that cybercrime was going to cost, I think it was $5 billion by 2016, and then they said by 2025 it was going to be 10.5 trillion. Well, last year they actually hit 12 trillion, and now they're predicting by 2027 it's going to be 23.4 trillion lost in GDP. So yes, we're seeing a real hockey stick effect happening, and the reason for that is, when the pandemic hit, everybody had to work remotely. There was a lot of organisations scrambling to set up their computers and their staff at home, and sometimes they may not have done it in a particularly safe and security conscious way. So, and likewise, the criminals, they couldn't do conventional crime because the borders were closed. Yeah. And they suddenly realised that, here's the internet. Everyone's congregating on the internet and they're doing all their business here and they're living their lives here. It's a great hunting ground for cyber criminals. Now, small to medium-sized businesses don't have the resilience to bounce back as easily from a cyber attack as some of the larger ones do. If they lose their systems and lose the inability to work or know what stuff's coming through the door, then they can go under very quickly. We had a really great case of a builder, and Wendy can probably talk to that one a little bit more, who was impacted by a third-party attack.
People don't understand that when somebody else is hit by a cyber attack, that it may also impact your own business. So the instance that Jan is referring to there is we've had businesses who ended up having a cyber attack, and what that meant was that it stopped their business in its footsteps, and they couldn't then communicate with the customers and the tradespeople that work with them to let them know where their products were. So they had products that were sitting in ports in New Zealand or around the globe or in transit, but they then couldn't tell the builders who had ordered those products where they were or how long it was going to take to get them in, or when they'd even be able to reorder products to get them to a builder to put them into the likes of everyday people's houses like myself and yours, Jonathan. But in actual fact, it wasn't his fault, but the organisation down the supply chain that had the cyber attack was actually causing that impact to him, but he was losing customers because of it. It's not actually just you when you're cyber attacked directly that might be impacted. So he couldn't tell his customers when he might be able to get the doors and windows fitted into their builds, which then in turn holds up their builds for a whole number of other reasons for closing in houses and weatherproofing them. It has a flow-on effect right down the chain, and he's losing business because somebody else has been cyber attacked. So his reputation is being impacted due to that.
Yeah, industry is extremely interconnected, in 2024, isn't it? So when the weakest link in the chain breaks, it starts a domino effect down, the whole supply chain, doesn't it?
You need to make sure that you are going back and doing your due diligence on your suppliers, and it doesn't matter what size organisation you work in or what type of services you're getting from suppliers or vice versa, understanding what sort of settings that they have in place so that you know where those risks may be and how you may be able to carry on your business is a key thing to be able to do in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned just a moment ago talking about sort of, that moment of COVID where the penny is dropping for you guys. And, there was a huge shift to remote teams. Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about that? What are specifically the risks that go along with having a dispersed workforce and people working at home, using the family computer and all that sort of thing?
So if you think about businesses back 10, 15 years ago, no one would work outside of the business. Everyone had a computer in their office or in their workspace. And they had things called firewalls that would actually protect all the computers inside that. So if you think of it like a fence around a house, nothing was going to get in without going through the firewall first. Along comes COVID. Everybody picks up their laptop and their phone and off they go and they start working from home or working from cafes. And it's impossible to actually protect the business using just that firewall approach now because everyone's outside of that fence and operating. Now, to make it a bit more complicated, they're also working in environments that have never been assessed for security. So your home network, you have to use your own router to get onto the internet. And some people have never changed their username or password for that router. And the criminals know this. They often know the default username and password of home routers and modems and things. And they will use that to their advantage. The other big risk on home networks is other family members. So, you may have a family member, a child or a teenager that likes doing lots of surfing on strange websites or maybe downloading games and things without checking first. And all that kind of behaviour and activity, even more so today, can unintentionally bring malware into your system, which then if you hop on, connect into your workplace, it can actually transfer from your home network right into your workplace. Now, they have developed things called endpoint protection, which actually makes sure that each of those, if you think of the laptops, they're the endpoints to the network. So they can provide a level of protection, but you've got to actually actively make sure that you have these products in place. So, and we know that Entelar works and puts in place some good technology around networks, and I know they've got some good tools that are useful in this respect.
Indeed, they absolutely do. And on that, it definitely is a wild world out there at the moment, isn't it? There's multiple emerging threats all the time. How are small business owners to stay across all of this with, limited bandwidth? They're trying to run a business. How do they stay up to date with this, ever-evolving threat landscape?
Well, first of all, you actually have to understand what it is you're trying to protect and where the gaps are in that protection. So we always recommend doing a baseline assessment of your people, your processes, and your technology, and just get a handle on where you actually sit in terms of protection. Often a lot of small businesses will be doing their own IT, and we don't recommend that at all these days. You wouldn't write your own legal contracts or do your own dentist work. So, even though you could if you really wanted to, but, so don't do your own IT. Get yourself a business license on your computer and a professional version of whatever collaboration tool you use, be it Microsoft or Google or whatever, and use that. But also, if you can, get yourself an IT provider to set it all up for you, because these days you've got to have the right level of security on your computers to stay safe. Antivirus is no longer enough. If you can get other layers of protection, like mail filtering or endpoint protection, as we discussed before, you're in a much safer place. And we know that some of the criminals are just lazy. They will go and find the lowest hanging fruit. But these days we're seeing a lot of automated attacks as well. Ransomware has become quite popular. Every 11 seconds someone is being ransomed in the world. And, we saw a case a couple of years ago where a farmer woke up one morning to see all his cows standing in the field, and he was wondering why his brand new robotic milking machine wasn't processing them. And then he went down to the cow shed, and lo and behold, he had a ransomware attack that had shut down his robotic milking machine. Now, what do you do when you've got a couple of hundred cows needing to be milked and your milking machine is completely defunct? He had it connected in through his home network and didn't have the right level of protection in place. And that was the result, and it caused him a massive headache, not to mention an animal health issue as well.
It's a rather unusual attack vector, isn't it? I've got to say, that's the first time I've heard of attack via milking machine.
Yeah, totally. And the scary thing is that if you go on the dark web and pay a couple of $100, you can actually buy a ransomware kit these days, and you need zero technical knowledge to run it. You can have a monthly payment system with the person who wrote it, or you can negotiate a share of the profits. And then all you have to do is install it, click a button, and it will go off and find all the computers in the world that have vulnerabilities that haven't been patched recently, and it will try and launch an attack against them. It's that easy.
The commodification of hacking, and the bar to being a scumbag is getting lower all the time, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it's also important to understand that actually the criminals are set up like big businesses these days. So you have two types of attacks mainly. So the first is state-sponsored, where it's a government, and you will have seen or heard of some of this happening over in Ukraine and Russia, where they've got military units that are just dedicated to doing cyber attacks. Now, Russia launched a series of cyber attacks before the Ukraine war to try and take out places like hospitals and fire departments, pretty much anyone they thought was going to rally as soon as they got boots on the ground. And that cyber warfare has continued ever since. The other type is cybercrime, and they are set up like corporations these days. They've got leave plans, they've got work rosters, they know exactly who they're going to target and how. And unfortunately, they even sometimes do slave labour. So sometimes they'll advertise jobs in poor countries, and they'll get people to come over, and then they lock them in a big call centre and say, right, you're going to try and hack all these people using a fake profile from Facebook or a fake business, and off you go, and do not fail. So it's insidious, and it's not your weird loners sitting in their mother's basement drinking Powerade and eating pizza these days. It is very organised and very deliberate. But the common thing between the two types of actors is they always use phishing emails as the very first port of call, because it's the easiest way to get in, and 90% of the time it's effective.
Okay, so given the ubiquity of phishing emails as that sort of first point of attack, what's a good bit of advice for anybody listening today to to not be a sucker, not get sucked in?
Probably the best piece of advice that you can find is phishing emails tend to play on the human psyche, Jonathan. So they're looking for ways to put pressure on you and exert ways for you to say, hey, I've got a really good deal. You need to buy this. You need to click on the link. And a lot of attackers are also posing as suppliers that you may have in your business nowadays if they've got enough information about your business. So it's really about actually slowing down and thinking about things before you click on them. And we live in a really fast-paced world now, and a huge number of us don't just sit at our desks anymore looking at email and answering email. We're often scrolling through emails on our phone when we're sitting waiting for someone, or we're doing other things, and we might go, oh, I'll just sort that out right now because it seems like a good thing to do. And it's very much a sense check with yourself as to, am I expecting this kind of email? Is this something that I should be responding to? Where has it come from? Is it asking me something out of the norm that I wouldn't normally do? So it's a little bit of what we call human training back on ourselves around what needs to happen when it comes to phishing emails, because the minute that you've clicked on the link and you've started to either enter credentials or it's taken you somewhere that perhaps you shouldn't go, it's too late, and you can't necessarily. You can come back from that, but you're already in the midst of having to deal with a cyber incident.
Right. Nicely put. Okay. So, all right, here's a good place to sort of change tack a little bit. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your work with the Entelar Group and where Outfox sort of sits in all that interfacing with Entelar and its customers?
And the Entelar Group sort of works at one end of technology and the customers and the partners that they work with. They're putting in big infrastructure within New Zealand. So those organisations still need to have all their processes and plans in place should they suffer a cyber incident. And because they're probably more than likely putting in things that also touch on critical infrastructure within New Zealand, that's really important for them. We're also working with Entelar Group to make sure that their customers and partners are well educated when it comes to cyber resilience by staff education, awareness training sessions at the right levels for the right people in the organisation. And coming together in a partnership to make sure that people are really aware of what's going on out there in the world. And to your point earlier, Jonathan, you're sort of raising the early warning bells when it comes to cybersecurity. It is about training. So working with them to do that kind of stuff.
It's actually a three-legged stool if you think about it. You have your people, your processes, and your technology. So Entelar take care of the technology end really well. They have some great products and services there. And our services are complementary to theirs. So we look after the people, we look after the processes, and we take a look at what technology is in place. We work as an independent organisation, so often we'll see gaps and we will say, okay, well, you've clearly got a gap here. Now, go and talk to your managed service provider and say this to them. This is the type of thing that you really need to plug this gap. We don't actually sell technology products ourselves, but we do help businesses work with their IT providers, or in this case Entelar, to identify some gaps that need to be plugged.
And there's more to it than just the commercial perspective there, isn't it? Outfox does a little bit of work in the community in that sort of education space, yeah?
Totally. So we're very big on the social aspect, and so we get involved with schools trying to help young people get trained up in cybersecurity and trying to encourage them to pick up cybersecurity as a career. We often do lots of presentations to community groups, and we love getting out there and spreading the word. You can't shut us up about cybersecurity, to be honest, because there's always a tale to tell, and it's really about educating people about the risk and about understanding what they can do to protect themselves. It's not all doom and gloom. You can protect yourselves reasonably well, and it's far better to be prepared for a cyber attack than get yourself stuck in the middle of one and not know what to do or who to call. So we think educating the wider public is a really important thing to do.
Right. And while we're on the topic of education, you guys have been doing some research here. Forthcoming white paper, yes?
Research is really important to us. And we want to understand better small to medium-sized businesses' psyche around adopting cyber resilience and having a philosophy of being a cyber resilient organisation.
As Jan said, we are doing some research, which a paper which will get published across different platforms within New Zealand.
And internationally.
Yeah, so that small to medium businesses and managed service providers, the likes of the Entelar Group, all those kind of people can get a handle on where the trends and the gaps are. And are they, what we're seeing is what we sometimes assume as experts realistic, because businesses think differently and they've got different priorities than what we think sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we really want to understand, what small to medium-sized businesses think about being cyber resilient, and are they taking up the cybersecurity offerings that MSPs are offering them at the pace that they need to be taking them up.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding it from the managed service provider's point of view. What's the attitude of your customers? Are they taking up the cybersecurity tools? And also from the customer's point of view as well. It's a separate paper looking at what's your attitude to spending on cybersecurity and being cyber resilient. Is it a priority for you, isn't it? And it's those sort of two questions that we're trying to answer with these white papers. And we're really keen, if anyone's interested in participating, they just need to flick us an email at info@outfox.co.nz, and we're more than happy to include them in the research.
And this research isn't the only extracurricular project you've got underway, is it? We were talking a little bit about a tool you guys are currently developing.
We're about to launch a tool that's aimed at non-technical businesses. So what we've realised and what we've observed both back in the old place, but also as we've been working with businesses, is that there are a lot more larger companies that are insisting on seeing their providers and their vendors having strong cybersecurity practices in place, and they're asking for verification of that. Now, when I did some research, I noticed that there were no qualifications or assessments just aimed at non-technical people for business owners to actually say, well, look, we've trained up our staff, that they are cyber resilient aware, and therefore you can have confidence that actually our staff know what they're doing. They're not going to get your information stolen or click on phishing emails, because they're actually being trained on a regular basis. So in a nutshell, we've started the cyber resistance, and the cyber resistance is all about getting non-technical staff and businesses a certification that they can go for. It's really easy. The staff sit an assessment, they get tested on both working at work and also at their home environment, but also on a series of standard types of cyber attacks that they might face in a day-to-day working environment. And assuming they pass the assessment, we give them a certification, a bronze, silver or gold certification. The advantage for the business, as I said before, is that the business can actually now say, well, we only hire cyber resistant staff. So they've all been tested, they've all been assessed, they know what the common attacks are. So we're a much better company to deal with than the one down the road that actually doesn't really care about cybersecurity. And in this day and age, that's going to be a big selling point for small businesses. And we're seeing it already with some of our clients, is that they were losing contracts because they couldn't tell the prospective client what their level of cybersecurity was and how they took handling their information seriously.
Good stuff. Lots to think about there. Thank you, Jan and Wendy, and thank you, dear listener, for tuning in. That's a wrap. If you like what you've heard here, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and don't hesitate to drop us a line with any feedback, topic ideas, or anything else you've got to say. I'm Jonathan Cotton. This was Totally Connected, brought to you by Entelar Group, the Total Connection Company. Till next time, thanks for listening. See you in a bit.